And now, ladies and gentlemen, will you turn your attention to the screen, please, as we catch a glimpse of the tenacity and national influence of tonight's keynote speaker, Penny Nance. We've been blessed here this evening. Now watch.
Penny Young Nance, she's the president and CEO of Concerned Women for America.
There are deep issues that demand an answer in this country. And the issue of marriage, the issue of sin, is a difficult one. The issue of life. We talk about all sorts of very difficult issues that concern Women for America, and we're not going to shut up just because people don't want to hear it.
Camera holder's about to have a connect. What?
You want everybody to have a choice, and my choice is not to pay for your abortion or your birth.
Wait, what's that?
I would say there are issues that demand an answer. The majority of people still support traditional marriage, and the Republican Party, the majority of primary voters do. And whether it's life, whether it's marriage, these are issues that deal with faith and deal with morality, and we have a right to have an opinion.
We're not sure how this is all going to work out. We've got to love these kids, and we've got to love these parents who are dealing with gender dysphoria, but we shouldn't lose our minds.
There's about $500,000 a year in your tax dollars and my tax dollars going to underwrite this organization, which is the nation's largest abortion provider. About 1 in 4 abortions in this country are being done at the hands of Planned Parenthood. So they're big abortion. They're not truly about protecting vulnerable women. They're a place that exploits women and sells their body parts, as we now know, and it's time that we cut off funding.
Some of these babies are aborted, I don't know, later in the pregnancy, right? Have you seen babies move at those stages, right? You've seen them move. That means they have a nervous system, right? That means they can feel, right?
That's up for debate.
She's a science denier. We have something called the sonogram. You might want to take a look at it. We know that babies at that point can feel pain at 20 weeks, which is what the bill we've been asking Congress to vote on. We know that a baby very early has a heartbeat at 18 days. Right. We know that they can hear and respond to their mother's voices. This is science.
We are speaking up for tiny Israel, who is threatened by this deal. Do you like Israel? Do you love Israel? Let me hear you say it. Israel! 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 Mr. President, you may have forgotten your promises, but we have not.
Woo! We have her in the house tonight. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have the real privilege of introducing to you one of America's most admired and respected women, Concerned Women for America's Executive Director, Penny Nance. South Dakota, tonight is not only your opportunity to thank this lady for coming to our great state for the very first time, but it's your opportunity of thanking her for carrying our family values torch in the national public arena when very few would. Please join me in giving a warm South Dakota welcome to Penny Nance.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I'm going to let you do that just so you can stretch for a second. Everybody just stretch a minute. It really is an honor to be here. I'm always kind of surprised. I'm a preacher's kid from Appalachia, and to get to stand here in front of such an august crowd and such a beautiful place feels like kind of a surprise to me. But I want to tell you tonight about another surprise that happened early on in my marriage. Now, despite the fact that I spent many years as a pro-life and pro-family lobbyist, I really wasn't all that interested in having kids. It's true. I mean, it's not that I understood, children are a gift from the Lord, they're His reward, but in my 20s, the idea of having spit up on my perfectly tailored suit and going several years without a decent night's sleep just didn't sound all that exciting. So, 3 months into my marriage, when I found out I was expecting, I was absolutely terrified. I was floored. But the good news for me is the Lord gave me such a wonderful husband. My husband, Will, is just rock solid. And he was thrilled. We were broke, not the Hillary Clinton kind of broke, I mean really broke. We were both working for ministry. He was working for Prison Fellowship Ministries. I was working for CWA. And so it took some getting used to, and I needed to catch up with him a little, right? So we went to our first sonogram. And I remember walking in to the building and getting up on the table, and the doctor rolling up beside me and, putting a little jelly on my tummy and getting the instrument out and pulling the screen over for us to take a look. And for the first time, I saw the beautiful face of my daughter, Claire. I saw her eyes and her nose and her mouth and her little hands and her little feet and her spine and her heart. And suddenly my heart was touched. And I understood. I didn't have the flu. I mean, I intellectually already knew that. But I got it now, right? And so now I'm like, okay, I get this. This is another separate human being. And I'm going to prepare because this is really important and I don't want to mess it up. So I read all the books and I painted her room and I hung up all her little smock dresses. And I thought, okay, now I'm ready. But let me tell you, nothing could have prepared me for after 22 hours of labor when the doctor handed me this beautiful gift. My very capacity for love seemed trite and small in comparison. And suddenly, something changed. It was almost like my heart had grown 3 times its normal size, like the Grinch. Remember that cartoon, The Grinch That Stole Christmas? It was that moment. And my heart was this open, gaping womb for this gift that God gave me, even though I didn't know that I wanted her. And it changed me. Now, that's not a story that is really unique. Many people in this room can tell that same story because it's the story of birth and it's the story of life. And it is a beautiful story. I just dropped off Claire for her freshman year in college at Liberty University. I'm remaining calm. And I'm enjoying getting to know this stage in her life. And this is an important stage. And meeting her friends who are these fascinating, strong, godly Christian women. And as the head of CWA, I also am getting to know that whole generation. Because we have 21 college chapters. We call them our Young Women for America chapters all across this country. And I'm going to tell you, the future's looking bright. These are amazing women. But let's be honest. They have amazing obstacles before them. They are born in a very difficult time in our nation. In fact, I would go as far to say is they are facing a war on women. Now, hang with me. It's not the war that the left has defined somehow as, the idea that the little sisters of the poor refusing to pay for Sandra Fluke's birth control is in some way a war. No, this is a war that threatens their very existence. It's a war by the militant left and waged by evil around the globe against young women. This one is about life and death. Imagine for a moment that I had not been a woman of faith, that I'd been someone different, and instead of going into my pro-life OBGYN's office, that instead I had wandered into a taxpayer-funded Planned Parenthood clinic. I would have been told that I owed it to myself, owed it to my family, owed it to my career to end this pregnancy. I would have been told that that would have been the compassionate answer to my issue, my dilemma, and my concern and my fear. And that decision is made over 1 million times a year all over this country. Hundreds of thousands of Claires are never born because their mothers are convinced that the difference between choosing life and choosing death is like the difference between choosing a Coke or a Pepsi. And we must recognize that when these women walk in, many of them desperate for another alternative, that nothing will ever be presented to them in these Planned Parenthood bastions of death that will look ever viable to them. And so many baby girls and boys don't make it to the cradle. And for the Claires that are born, life is much more difficult. Our culture is not tolerant of young women who are Bible-believing women of faith. No, Hollywood, liberal academia, feminism will want to use any means possible to undermine their modesty, to undermine their principles. And when they are successful in bullying them or seducing them into immorality, and then the obvious answer happens, the obvious issue arises. Their answer is always going to be the same thing. It's really their religion. They always come back to abortion. And the Planned Parenthood gravy train continues. Young women are sold the false narrative that equates abortion with compassion and unwanted pregnancy with an unwanted baby. 56 million babies have been aborted since Roe v. Wade, and 1 in 4 women in this country will choose abortion before the age of 30, with so many desperate outcomes. Now, the one glimmer of hope is the fact that society is sick of this. Public opinion is beginning to change and be on our side. Millennials, 85% of millennials say that abortion is immoral. The consequences of this living, people are tired of it. They get it. But the left, as you've heard me say already, are the science deniers and the flat earthers of our time. They will never admit to this truth. Young women today and young men also face, what we've already talked about, religious liberty oppression. Hillary Clinton recently said, and I quote, "Deep-seated cultural codes, religious beliefs, and structural biases have to be changed." And she goes on to say, in order for women to receive reproductive health care. You get that? We're the problem, folks. All of you are what's holding women back from utopia. All of our young women, all of our young women that come every year for the March for Life, all those young women for America chapter leaders, they're the problem. They are holding back the rest of the country. The left's goal is not just to make us unicorns, no. It's to make us bigots and idiots who don't understand the sophisticated new world that we live in, that has evolved past our Neanderthal beliefs, and along with it, to make it illegal for us to practice our faith, or at least not even violate our religious beliefs. That includes baking a cake, arranging flowers, doing photography, paying for someone else's abortion. Young women in this country are being threatened before the cradle. They're being threatened by their religious liberty. And as bad as all of that is, it doesn't even hold a candle to the war against women at the hands of Islamic jihadists. Women in the Middle East so desperately need our help. Now, most of you have read and know something about the abuse and rape and torture of women that's happening at the hands of ISIS, the Yazidi women, how they've suffered. If you read recently, the New York Times did a piece on how they've not only said, according to their faith, that this is okay, they've actually elevated it to an act of worship. So when an ISIS fighter takes a young woman, he gets down on his knees before the rape and he prays while she begs. And then he gets up and he rapes her, and then he gets down and he prays again and thanks God while she weeps. It's disgusting, the open slave markets, the abuse, the terror. And just when I thought I'd heard it all, I learned about Kayla Mueller. Kayla Mueller was a 26-year-old Christian American citizen who was working as a humanitarian aid worker when she was taken hostage by ISIS in 2013. She was held for 2 years, and she died in 2015. ISIS said she died because of a Jordanian airstrike, but no one really believes that to be true. About a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, information leaked out about how the last 2 years of Kayla Mueller's life went. You see, she had been selected by al-Baghdadi, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who is the supreme leader of ISIS, as his personal sex slave. He chose her because she was a U.S. citizen and because she was a Christian. He held her for 2 years and raped and tortured her. His attack was against every woman in America. His behavior was so evil that it is from the pit of hell. And that is exactly where our U.S. military ought to send him in short order. No more hand wringing, no more sweaty palm leading from behind, because when we don't lead, women suffer around this world. We make the world less safe when we do not lead. Folks, I call this a crisis in leadership. In my book that comes out in April, I say this is the Esther moment for this nation. Now, you remember the story of Esther. She was a 6th century BC nobody. She was an orphan who was plucked from obscurity and made the queen of the vast Medo-Persian Empire. And she didn't choose it. But hey, once it happened, it was pretty good, because let's face it, it's good to be queen. It's good to be waited on hand and foot, and to people to admire you and to laugh at your jokes, to bring you your coffee in bed in the morning. I mean, who wouldn't love that? She got really comfortable. She was so comfortable, she was missing the crisis that was happening right before her face, much like many of the Christians in our country today. She was so comfortable in her little world that her uncle Mordecai had to come and give her a little talking to. And in Esther 4, he says, Esther, you're in crisis. Your people are getting ready to get wiped off the map. The Jews are going to die if you don't wake up. And he says, don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all the other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. He says, and I think this is for us, perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this. In other words, perhaps everything you've enjoyed up until this moment, your good family, your education, and any material wealth that you've been able to amass, have been leading up to this moment. Wake up. What are you going to do? And so she says, go and gather together all the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. And if I die, I must die. Now that's leadership, right? I'm going to risk it all because I see the crisis before me. I think that's a model for us. What did she do? First, she prayed. She got down on her knees. She pulled her family and friends around her, and she got down on her knees, and she got all the things that were in her heart that were keeping her from being an advocate to being God's spokesperson. She got it under the blood. All the things that was holding her back, she got on her knees. 2 Chronicles 7:14 says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, I will seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and I will heal their land. What is it that's holding us back? Our churches in America, what's holding us back? How can we talk about marriage when our own marriages are falling apart? How can we talk about immorality when we know the church is replete with pornography? Barna tells us that 37% of pastors are struggling with cyber porn. No wonder they can't talk about marriage. We've got to get the things that are broken in us under Jesus' blood. And then we got to get up. And we got to stand. And that's what Concerned Women for America and Family Heritage Alliance has been doing. We're standing, and you're going to stand and are standing with us. We're standing together, and we can't back down. We won't back down. It seemed kind of silly to talk about being willing to go to jail for our faith a few months ago, didn't it? Not so much anymore, does it? But we won't back down. And then after we stand, we're going to speak. We're going to speak. We're going to speak to our friends and our neighbors. We're going before Congress. We're going before our state representatives. We're speaking in the media. And then in November of 2016, we had better speak at the polls. There's nothing left, folks. All these things that we've got to do to protect our nation. This is our time. And all those people that we talked about that are blithely unaware of what's going on, the crisis before them, like Esther that's enjoying life so much they forgot to notice, we got to wake them up. We got to take them by the arm and by the elbow and take them with us to the polls, because if we want to stop abortion, if we want to protect religious freedom, if we want to protect women in the Middle East, if we want to lead as a nation, it's got to be done. We've got to speak, and in November, we're going to speak. We are here to speak. We are here for such a time as this. We must speak for truth and justice. Now, I've seen what happens. In closing, I've seen what happens when Christians refuse to speak. I just got back from my second trip to Israel, and once again, I got to go to Yad Vashem, which is their Holocaust museum. And if you haven't gone, you absolutely should go. It's a beautiful place, beautiful architecture, beautiful landscape. But when you walk in the building, it's of course very dark because it chronicles the murder of 6 million Jews at the hands of the Nazis. But it also chronicles something else. It chronicles the fact that Christians, with a few very notable exceptions, turned their face to evil. We didn't speak. We didn't stand. When you walk out of the main building in Yad Vashem, you walk to the back of the property, there's a building called the Children's Memorial. 1.5 million children died in the Holocaust. When you walk into the building, it's dark. You round a corner and you enter a room. It's a round room, and it's a sphere that goes all the way up several stories. In the middle of the room is one candle. And the light from that candle is reflected by thousands of tiny mirrors all over the walls, all the way to the ceiling, signifying the thousands of lives that were snuffed out during the Holocaust. Around the middle of the room are pictures of actual faces of children who died. And as you walk around the room and you look at the faces, you hear their names, their ages, and their countries of origin. So you hear Maria Kubik, age 10, Denmark. You hear Edith Shea, age 12, Germany. And you hear Gregory Norman, age 3, Austria. And on and on and on. It accuses and reminds us that we didn't speak and stand for the least of these when they needed us. And when you walk out, you see a sign that says, "The road to Auschwitz was paved with apathy." We didn't speak. Now, I know in a room this size, we have people who are thinking, that kind of evil could never be allowed to exist again. We could never allow that to happen. Not on our watch. We wouldn't allow that to happen. Never again. Never again. Never again, but 56 million babies have been aborted since Roe v. Wade. Never again, but religious freedom is oppressed in this country every day. Never again, but 100,000 women and children are trafficked in the shores of this nation every year. never again, but women and children are raped and abused and enslaved at the hands of Islamic jihadists all over the world right now. We must pray. We must stand. We must speak. Will you be the generation? Will you be the Esthers of this day? Will you stand? Will you stand? Thank you. God bless you.